What's up, everyone? K-Rugs, the Sober Dog here with a special guest, Doc Frank here from Addiction Mindset. Doc Frank's got awesome channel, awesome TikTok, Instagram. He's everywhere. Great YouTube. Doc, you want to introduce yourself? Give us a little background about your story and everything you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyle. I'm
Of
excited
course.
to be here on your channel, man. This is very exciting. So yeah, just for those people who don't know what it is I do, I have a addiction recovery coaching company called Addiction Mindset. And we kind of specialize in helping people with nicotine addiction, THC addiction, energy drink addiction, and pornography addiction is another really big one that we've kind of been into over the course of the last year. And the company is focused around things that I've personally kind of dealt with in the past and things that I felt, quite frankly, don't get enough attention. We talk about, other drugs in such a strict way, whether that's opioids or cocaine or this or that. But I feel like nicotine gets discussed as kind of like, oh, that's a habit. And when it comes to the pre-workouts and the energy drinks, I don't think anyone thinks anything of it. But the reality is a lot of these things are dangerous. So I made a company to help people specifically with those things.
That's awesome. And yeah, that leads right into kind of what I was going to start it off with. I wrote an article a while back about speedballs, and I said, in it, one of the things is like Red Bull and vodka is technically a speedball. One's telling your system to speed up and the other slow down, but that's not, obviously viewed like cocaine and heroin, but just an example of kind of how some of the things, exactly like you said, people don't look at nicotine, pre-workout, all that as serious. Or is that what you see too, like on a daily basis?
Think about this. Absolutely. And most people that I am working with have each of those things going on in their life. So very rarely,
Yeah.
I mean, not all the time, but very rarely is the person calling me just addicted to nicotine or just addicted to pornography. Well, maybe pornography, but more often than not, someone's calling me and they're saying, hey, I have those exact 3 or 4 things that I'm addicted to. And what I want people to think about is imagine going through your day, and maybe you don't have to imagine it, maybe you've lived it like like I have, but so you wake up in the morning and boom, you have some nicotine and you pound an energy drink or you pound a pre-workout product, tons of stimulants going on between the nicotine and the pre-workout. Then you're going on throughout your day and you're feeling a little bit tired, so more nicotine, maybe a coffee, maybe an espresso. Then you come home at night and you're all wired from your day, so you have to slow yourself down. So now at this point, maybe you watch some porn and then you smoke some weed. And now you got to wake up the next day and your brain overnight tried to process what just happened to you the day before. And when you think about all those things combined, that's a powerful mixture of substances, especially if we're talking about an addiction to each one of those. It's like we covered 4 or 5 different addictions in one day. And chances are, if the person's calling me, they've been doing this for years. This has kind of been a lifestyle for years. And I get it. I can relate to it. But that's a lot. Like that's a lot for someone's brain to interpret, right? And you may have seen, I know Amen Clinics, I believe is the title. They've done a bunch of brain scans on people with each of those individual addictions. What if you combine all of those now? You talk about instant gratification and discipline and withdrawal symptoms, because nicotine has withdrawal, pornography has withdrawal, caffeine has withdrawal. And then especially if it's in the form of a pre-workout or an energy drink, you now have 3 or 4 very powerful addictions, all with their own sets of withdrawal symptoms. And I think to expect someone to just casually go about that on their own, or for someone to just say like, more often that, oh, we'll just, use Nicorette or, oh, just stop drinking caffeine. Like it's not that easy. It's not. And without the proper guidance, usually then, sometimes people start doing more of one than the other. I think we talked about this the other night with nicotine. Like, it's like I quit smoking, but I chew more now, or I vape more now. It's like, it's a hard thing. So that's really my viewpoint on a lot of those substances, and I just think it's such a serious issue, especially nowadays where we have access to things, right? So like on the phone here, constant access to
Oh
whatever
yeah.
content I want, good or bad access. Um, that's hard to manage in today's world. I think like to have constant 24/7 self-control, I think is it becomes very challenging for a lot of people, and I can understand that. Um,
Sure.
and I just don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we or especially looking at all those things combined, I don't think we talk about it enough. How seriously crippling that could be on someone's life or whatever it is they have going on. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm all about.
Yeah,
That's
no, and I love your videos, and you hit so many different areas. And for anyone that missed it, or to check out Doc Frank's channel, Addiction Mindset. We had a video on his channel last night where he kind of gave me like basically what I would assume would be like almost an hour nicotine addiction session.
yeah.
And I was at work today, and I am thinking of like 4 or 5 different things you said there, of between the billions of nicotine neurons, and starving them, and potentially trying the gum because it's something I never did serious, and all these other great things that I'm like, let me see what I could put into play or work with. And that's just so much awesome information. That definitely. What I wanted to ask is more specifically too right now with like the porn addiction.
Yeah.
I could relate just from watching porn, and then real life activities sometimes don't measure up, because the porn can be so specific to all these different things. And then I told myself I'm not going to watch it for a while, and I felt better when I was with a female companion doing whatever, because it's just real life is not like porn. You stub your toe, run out of breath, get a cramp, things go on. But how does that relate more to the science of it, what's going on in people's head?
Like when they have an addiction to pornography, are you talking about the
Yeah.
science of that?
Well, let's say they have an addiction. Sure.
Yeah, okay, so let me try and answer this. So pornography addiction becomes very, very tricky because just like regular sex or intercourse or whatever,
Yeah.
you get a dopamine release, and you get a big dopamine release.
Yeah.
Very few things feel as good for most people as an orgasm, right? Like there's very few highs that feel that good. And the porn industry understands that they can bring people to that level through a phone, through a computer screen.
Sure.
And when that happens, your brain obviously releases a massive amount of dopamine, and it trains you to do that again. But the problem is, just like any other drug, you build a tolerance to pornography. So just like you need more nicotine to get a buzz, just like you need more of a drug to achieve that high, you wind up needing more and more intense content to get that same rush, to get that same high. And that's where it then becomes challenging, because then maybe you find yourself in a relationship and you're having sex and it's good, but the person, and this happens all the time, the person says, I'd rather just be watching porn. Like, this is nice, but I'd rather be watching porn. I'd rather be getting off to that, because now that threshold in their personal sex life isn't hitting that same threshold that they're able to get with pornography. So it's a really tricky addiction. And I think now with cell phones and back in the day, like you'd have to download a video off of like LimeWire or something and take like 2.5 hours. And it was complicated.
Yeah.
Like you would dial up and like someone calls it, knocks you off. Like it was complex. Nowadays it's not complex anymore. Kind of like vaping. Like it's just constantly at the tip of your fingers. Like you don't need to walk outside to hit a vape. You don't really need to interrupt your day too much to watch adult content. And it's I don't know. I think it's a very and there's so many things too, I think, that make pornography addiction particularly hard. If we were to talk about triggers in like a traditional sense, nowadays on social media, which we used to, you're on TikTok, you know how it is. Like
Yeah.
you can see crazy explicit videos on there. And if you even watch one of them for a second, they're going to force feed you like 10 more videos in a row, just like that one. And it, it's very triggering. Like it's a very triggering thing. Like there's lots of things these days that could really trigger an episode or a relapse or a craving of pornography. And I don't know. I think that's very, very, very hard to navigate. And it kind of ruins, like, when you're with another individual, significant other, it damages that in a way. Because one, you might lose sexual interest in that person, and that becomes problematic. But two, just subconsciously it starts to you devalue people in a way, like not blatantly rude. Some people might be, but I think that person was always an asshole. You just kind of lose your connection. I'll say, especially with that significant other, or you just start to look at people strictly from like a sexual standpoint, as compared to like, hey, that's a person that you're trying to pursue a relationship with. That's an actual like human being, and there's more to connect with that person than on just sex. But if all you can think about is, a fat ass in your head, and you know what I mean, something like that, like you kind of start to miss things. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
absolutely. I was gonna say, speaking of the LimeWire thing, I remember the first time I downloaded a porn video on LimeWire. It took like 3 hours. I was so excited, and I was, shocked that like, wow, I could do this now. And it was definite, probably like, I don't know, 7th grade maybe, and it was like that time too where it slowly started to get better and easier, and videos were less and less. And like you said about the TikTok, I could imagine. So if would people too, like, say I'm watching TikTok and then you see, a pretty girl dancing, then I could see somebody like justifying, well, that's pretty similar to porn. I might as well just watch porn now, right?
100%. It happens all the time, and it's so tricky because it's like people, it's interesting. So like if someone's addicted to, let's say, nicotine, or like even another drug, like I don't know, I'll pick one, like cocaine. Like it's always embarrassing. Like very often, like people don't like talking about we talked about this yesterday. It's like, you bump into someone, oh, what have you been up to? Oh man, I wound up getting addicted to this stuff and I wound up in jail. It's always embarrassing. But like porn in particularly is challenging for people to talk about. And there's of course people who don't take it seriously. They don't really see it as a real addiction, but I think it's much more common than the literature would report, especially among, let's say, our generation and younger, where we did have constant access to phones. Maybe it wasn't so much with the older generations, but now, like, that's one of my most commonly requested things that people want me to talk about. Those are some of my YouTube videos that do the best. And I just think it's just a growing problem. And kind of like vaping, you're also fighting like the general acceptance of it, like, which is fine. I don't, like, do what you want with your life. You want to start an OnlyFans and make money that way, like, I don't care, do what you want. But it does create this acceptance of like, oh, he or she is hustling on OnlyFans, they're just getting that money. And it's like, yeah, but there's different ways you can get money, and that's fine. You want to do that, that's fine. You have every right to. But it kind of creates this acceptance now, like, oh yeah, of course, like, I watch porn, I pay for OnlyFans, that's great. But it's like, I don't know. I think the more acceptance we're seeing of that, the more people are going to have problems, and the more they're going to be scared to talk about those problems. Do you know does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that is so true. And something I wanted to ask you a little bit different is, so with something like heroin or cocaine, when I always viewed the addiction, it's okay, I used heroin and coke and then I got sober, and it's like pure abstinence from it is my sobriety. But with something like porn, it starts to delve into it a little bit with, like you said, even like a nonchalant Instagram of like, a friend from high school in her bikini. And then even further, like an eating disorder, I always thought that would be particularly challenging because you're not giving up food for life. It's something you still got to deal with on a daily basis. And just like porn, like, I mean, I think the average guy, you see a beautiful girl walking down the street, thoughts go through your head, but there's all that like gray area of where the porn, where the Instagram picture, where the Facebook picture, like you were talking about, it's just fascinating to me, but scary to an extent, you
You
know?
brought up a great point. Like you don't need necessarily like you don't need heroin to get through your day, but like you kind of need media content. Like if you want to
Yeah.
stay in touch, like there is a place in today's world where like you kind of need to have like you don't need an Instagram, but you need it to stay connected. Or if you have a business online or whatever, you're right. It gets very, and that's one of the things that just you hit the nail on the head with that. It makes it so complicated. It makes it so complicated. But no, I would still say the same thing though. I would tell that person you have to view it the same way that you viewed it as heroin or whatever else you quit drinking.
Sure.
Like you might relapse, it might happen, but you really don't want to. Like you really want to avoid that at all costs and understand it's a drug. And I tell people too, like purge your social media content. Like I tell people all the time, one of the first steps I say is like, you see a video like that pop up, click not interested, block that person, block that model. Like, what are you doing following, whatever, who's ever triggering you? You know what I mean? Like chances are they're not giving you any direct value to your life at this moment, aside from you like looking at, whatever their photos are. So, my media content is very, very just, it's focused on business. It's focused on health and wellness. It's very, very strict and addiction. Like I really don't venture out on media and this kind of goes to our conversation yesterday. You know what? Actually, this ties into something we said. I really try to avoid being like a consumer. So if I'm watching media content, I don't want to be on there consuming. I want to be utilizing it to my advantage and to help other people and to do things. So I don't want to just scroll TikTok and get lost scrolling dumb videos for 4 hours. Like if I'm on TikTok watching, I'm watching to figure out what my next post is going to be, what my next trend is going to be. Not to say you can't enjoy yourself, learning, but I think you get my point. Like it just goes back to like, I'm very, very careful about the content that I consume. Not only, fear of like, okay, is this something that might be not appropriate to be consuming, but even more so like, I don't want to be wasting my time with that. So yeah.
Along those lines, say somebody out there watching thinks that they watch too much porn or could have a porn addiction, you already said purge purge your social. What else would you recommend, or what are some steps?
Yeah, that's step one. I think doing the social media thing is huge, and taking care of your phone is huge. I tell a lot of people, I say like, hey, if you have a problem at night, don't take your phone in your room at night anymore. Thing number two, and you could apply this to really any addiction, but I do think with porn, it seems to work particularly well. You can get like, so I always tell people when you quit addiction, you should come up with like a list of activities or default things that you can do when you get cravings. So if you have I say like get like 12 or 15 index cards and write down activities. And maybe you split it up to morning activities and evening activities. So it's in the evening, you get a craving, reach into this bowl or bag and pull out an index card. And what's on that index card? Maybe it says go for a walk. Maybe it says meditate. Maybe it says watch motivational YouTube video. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's drawing. Maybe it's reading. And I say, just go do that activity. So, okay, here's that craving to watch porn at night. Reach into my bag. There's my index card. Oh, it says go for a walk. Okay, fine. Maybe it's really late at night. I'll listen to an audiobook. So that's the other thing. I tell people a lot of times, don't bring your phone in your room. If you have to, if it's at night, especially like, or if it's when you're sleeping, like a lot of people, it's just when they watch porn before they sleep, whether they're napping or going to bed. I say like, just keep your phone in a different room. Go on Amazon and buy an alarm clock. Like, don't mess around with it. And then like anything else, I think a lot of it comes down to just seeing it for what it really is, because porn is obviously viewed as a source of pleasure. But the reality is if you're wanting to quit, that means you're really not getting any pleasure out of this anymore. You wouldn't want to quit something that truly gave you joy or that truly pleasured you. So you got to just start to see porn for what it really is. I think a lot of people, to get tied up in the thought of like, oh my God, I can't believe I watched this, or I know how bad this is. I know the ties to, child sex trafficking, this and that. I'm a horrible person. And then kind of like we talked about with the health consequences and nicotine, that just feeds feelings of like guilt and fear. And then it just makes you go do that behavior again, even though you know it's bad. So I try and avoid that approach with people. Like I try and avoid, like, why it's bad for you, but tell me, like, why do you care about it? Like, is it damaging your marriage? Is it damaging the way you communicate with people? Is it creating social anxiety? Is it just time? Is it just you're spending too much time during the day watching porn and you have other things you should be doing during the day? So that's what I tell people, like, focus on what it really is in the moment and what it's really doing to you in the moment. Don't get tied up in like all the other bad messages. I even see on TikTok so many people come on like, stop watching porn, you're feeding child sex trafficking. Like, yeah, the person knows they probably don't feel good about what they're doing already. And in my opinion, that's not like constructive criticism. Like, it's good to know that. Like, I think it's good to share that knowledge, but I don't think that's going to be the message that gets people to quit. If anything, I think it's just going to make them feel crappier and fuel that addiction more. So
sure. And I was going to say also, I feel like it's kind of so far removed that the effect is not there. The equivalent I look at, like if somebody told me once that, by you buying and using drugs, you're supporting terrorism. That's not why I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit because, I'm dying every day. And I view the same with porn. Like, of course, I don't want any children, anywhere in the world to be trafficked or hurt. But that's so far removed from me sitting at the computer that it doesn't compute.
That's a great, that was, yeah, I couldn't have said anything better. You're 100% right. Like, it has to relate to you in the moment. And that's why I tell people, like, what is going on right now in your life? Like, why are you trying to quit right now? Like, take that reason and go with it. And I think too, with porn addiction, like any addiction, but especially that one, because of the amount of self-control and self-discipline it requires, I think that's a really cool thing to overcome and conquer. Like, I think that's really exciting for a person because you can apply that to other things immediately. Like, wow, I got over that. Now I can apply that to how much time I spend on social media. Like, you really do build, I think, a very, very high level of discipline if you choose to avoid the adult content. I think it's a really cool thing quitting that one, and that could even apply to then nutrition, like, because that's basically saying no to yourself. Like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to watch this. I'm not going to partake in this. That's like you truly just saying no to yourself. Like, it's you and that. And I don't know. I think you can then easily carry that over to like, no, tonight I don't need dessert. Like, I know it tastes good, but I really don't need it, and I'm not going to do it. So I think people who overcome that addiction can get an unbelievable amount of strength from it. And for anyone watching, it's like, oh, I can't believe it's that bad, or I don't think it's that bad. My thing is, try quitting for 90 days. And I think you'd be amazed at the withdrawal and the kind of the emotional roller coaster that you wind up going through. I tell people, try for night. I mean, a lot of people struggle to get through any days with like any addiction, but try and go for 90 days and see what happens. And if you guys haven't, go on Reddit. They have some unbelievable forums on there in pornography addiction where they talk about the 90-day experience that people had. And it's pretty wild. Like,
what are the withdrawals?
It's like any other drug. It's like sweating, headaches, nausea, joint pain, like serious joint pain and like pain. I'm trying to think. Certainly insomnia. Like, insomnia is huge for people. Decreased motivation, decreased drive, which again, someone watching this might be like, oh my God, I'll never quit. Why would I want that? No, like, those things are already decreased. You're just temporarily boosting them with the porn. You know what I mean? Like, long term, you get all that back, just to be clear on what I'm saying. Like, you get all that back and then more. But I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Like, people described all types of things. Those were some of the big ones that I remembered. Those were some of the big ones. Those anxiety, depression, those were some of the big ones when you first initially stop.
And I remember
I remember reading like on there guys saying like they were 3, 4, 5 weeks in, and all of a sudden they just have like 3 or 4 nights in a row of like wicked insomnia, wicked cravings that leads to like sweating and all this other stuff. And like that doesn't happen really with like nicotine or caffeine or other things. Like that's weird. Like that doesn't,
Yeah.
and you know other substances better than I do. Like very rarely do I hear someone 3 or 4 weeks into a detox on my substances. I don't know a lot of the other ones, just to be clear, but like very rarely do I hear someone like truly 4 weeks in or like 60 days in saying that they're still dealing with physical withdrawal symptoms. Like I don't know, most of that ends usually, I think.
Rarely I've heard of a delayed detox with some substances that have like a really long half-life, but
Okay.
the only besides there could obviously be the craving 60, 90, even 6 months in, and then the craving can trigger some kind of anxiety, sweating, but it's still rare. For me, the only thing that really persisted long term besides a craving here or there was dreams. I would have vivid using dreams for cocaine specifically, and I could see how maybe that would definitely be a
Oh,
porn thing too, because like wet dreams in the past when you're
yes.
in puberty and things like that, the dream could trigger a physical, I don't know, manifestation or reaction, so to
Eh,
speak.
That's a great point. That's fascinating. You're
Yeah,
probably right. I bet there's something to that. I've never looked into it into too much
yeah,
detail, but you're probably right. Um,
yeah. I mean, who knows?
and then my thing comes down to, so if someone's watching, it's like, okay, I'm gonna quit watching porn. And this goes for nicotine too. The thing that I say is I view it the same way as nicotine. Like I just view that those withdrawal symptoms and those things as that's that addiction dying. That's you winning. And the answer is, it's funny
Awesome.
too. Like the other thing I think about that too, that I was thinking today, and I kind of made a video on it. Like all I know is like when someone's dealing with that, and this is where I think talking helps and figuring out what your plan is helps. But so like say you're quitting porn and you're and you're like, oh my God, I have such a craving. I want to watch. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think one of the best things you can do is say to yourself, okay, I'm struggling right now. Like I'm struggling, but I know I can't do that. Like
Yeah,
I know that watching porn is not going to be the solution. I can do anything else. Hopefully it's not destructive. Obviously, we want it to be productive, not destructive. I can do anything else right now. It just can't be that. And that's
yeah,
like, it's kind of and there's a little comedy to it, but I was thinking about that, like, because I remember I said that to myself in the time before with nicotine and even other things. Like, I just there's one thing I can't do, and it's that. So I got to
yeah.
find something else.
Uh,
Obviously, don't go drink or do something bad. Like
yeah,
ideally now you go do exercise or you go write or you journal or you draw or you cook or I don't know, call a friend, call a
yeah.
coach, call a therapist. But yeah, there's one thing you can't do.
A,
So
a lady I work with, she quit smoking about 2 decades ago. And I would, say here and there at work, like, yeah, I want to quit, tobacco. And she said what helped her the most every time she would get a craving right when she first quit, and she still even does it. She's got this little like jewel game on her phone, and whatever, phone game
no,
addiction,
yeah, it's
separate. But
all
she
good.
said I would set myself about 10 minutes to play, and I would play the game, and by the time I'm done 10 minutes playing, I'm not thinking about it. And I was like, it's simple and great,
That's
just
a great tip for people.
yeah, really. Like for me, it's like even today, I was freaking out a little bit about. I'm not that I quit today, but I
You're
was
thinking about it.
at the gym. I was thinking about vaping, and so I started playing chess on the treadmill. And next thing I know, an hour went by, and I was like, that's a good tool for the future here. Get that little chess game on my phone and play a game.
Boom. And now you're putting together a plan for it. See, that's super
Yeah,
exciting. Like, oh, cool. Now you got another tool in your toolbox for it. That's how I think you overcome and maintain sobriety with things. Or at least, that's one
yeah,
way. That's one really good way. That's cool. No,
yeah,
porn, no different. No different. I honestly say like treat it like any other drug. It's just like you said, minus, it's just a little stranger, but there's a
sure.
website. They say they don't have ties to like religion. They might not. Either way, I don't care. Like it doesn't impact me. It's called Fight the New Drug. They're probably one of the biggest groups when it comes to pornography addiction and
Okay.
talking about that. But that's a good website. They have a lot of resources on there for anyone who's looking. They do it. They
Awesome.
do a good job.
Lem- Um,
Yeah.
I'm going to wind down here. Let me end on a little
Yeah.
bit of a lighter note. I've been seeing a lot of videos online about there's a specific name to it. I think NoFap or something, like basically not, not jerking off or whatever
Yeah.
for an extended period, and you're supposed to get, I don't know, energy and mental clarity. Have you researched that? Do you know anything about that?
I don't have any, but no one's funny. I made a video on that back in November. It's like
Oh,
no fap benefits. But honestly, I don't even know what, like, I knew it meant jerking off, but I didn't know what it actually stood for.
I still don't
and
know
I
what
still
it
don't
means.
know. And I think I made a whole YouTube video on it. And the point of my YouTube video just basically had a conversation like we had now. I didn't even really talk about that. So I don't know. I don't know if there's actually the whole semen retention thing.
Yeah.
I honestly haven't looked at literature on it. I honestly don't know. All I know is this: if I go back in my history and I picture myself watching adult media content, I can tell you probably 99.9% of the time afterwards, I felt like a piece of shit. Now, is that because afterwards, like, there's just nothing accomplished about that feeling? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've never said like, wow, Frank, good job. Like, you accomplished a lot. Just like, you deserve a pat on the back for this one. So I don't know if that's because
I held out for 15 minutes. Great one.
Exactly. So I don't know if that's because, of lack of semen retention, or if it's just because of the porn, but I would imagine to a large extent they go hand in hand. And look, I'm sure too, and I know there's literature out there because people are always like, oh, don't you know, like, jerking off prevents prostate cancer? Like, yeah, I'm sure in a healthy moderation, there's like, you're a human being, you're meant to have intercourse, like, you're meant to reproduce. So obviously there's a purpose to that. Like, it's an animal instinct. So, but yeah, I don't know. So to answer your question, I guess I just know when it relates to adult content, it's probably a bad idea. I'm sure a condition of where someone's like chronically masturbating or something is probably not good either. But I'm sure in moderation, like, intercourse and stuff is a healthy thing. So, that's my thing. But you shouldn't feel like a piece of shit afterwards then, in that case. Like, you should truly feel decent afterwards. I think people can determine where, like, wow, that was bad, and no, that was good. That was a healthy thing. So I don't know. That's my take.
That's Doc, I'm gonna check that video out too. But thank you so much. I know you have different accounts, either Addiction Mindset or Doc Frank here. You want to let everyone know where they can find you?
That's it. Yeah, on TikTok it's Doc Frank here, DOCFRANKHERE, and then YouTube and Instagram it's Addiction Mindset. And that's it. That's where you can find us. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know we're going to be doing more of these in the future.
Definitely.
That's awesome. We honed in on the porn addiction. I appreciate it. And if anyone missed it too, check out on Doc's channel, Addiction Mindset. We did a nicotine video about me and my use last night. So that was incredible too. Thank you so much for your time, Doc.
Thanks. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Of course. Have a great night, buddy. We'll be in touch.
See you, man. Bye now.
All right. See ya.